Hello, everyone, and you're very welcome to this third meeting coming after the public meetings on Cuba and Nicaragua, Cuba and Venezuela, rather, held by the Communist Party of Ireland. Today, we have the Nicaraguan ambassador to Ireland and Britain, Guisell Morales-Echaverry, and she will be talking today about Nicaragua, the Sandinista revolution, the imperialist pressures on Nicaragua. Ambassador, thank you very much for coming this evening. Would you like to introduce yourself, maybe say a few words?
Thank you, Eugenia. This has been very kind of you to invite me to have this to this interview and to tell about Nicaragua and to let the people know what is going on in the country. And I am the ambassador of Nicaragua to Ireland. I am the ambassador of Nicaragua to UK. I'm based in UK though, and also to Iceland. And I think this is very relevant today. That when the whole world is moving to defend against racism, and while imperial countries have a status of slave traders, anti-imperialist countries, independent countries such as Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and many other have a status of rebel slaves, liberation heroes. So that put us in a different part of the history. Moreover, Nicaragua is proud and is on our constitution, our Afro-descendant heritage, and recognize ourselves as a multicultural country. Laws has been passed to give up to recognize Afro-descendants and indigenous people political autonomy over their territory and resources and language. A territory of the size of El Salvador, just our country neighbor, has been legally registered to the Caribbean indigenous and Afro-descendant communities. And I think that is doing, not just saying. It's not enough to Twitter or to sign up, petitions or go to the demonstration, which is very important for Black Lives Matter, or to take the knee. But the movement and the solidarity must lead to a transformation of policies that not take in account that at the moment are not taking in account the rights of all people, to eradicate the inequality. I want to mention also that on 14th of June, we will remembering the anniversary of birth of Ernesto Che Guevara. And today I want to remember something he said, and I think is appropriate with what we are going to talk, but also from this moment of movement, of international movement that we're seeing against racism, against injustice, against crime. Be realistic and demand the impossible. Above all, always be capable of feeling deeply any injustice committed against anyone, anywhere in the world. Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, we all send our solidarity to revolutionaries in the United States who are struggling against injustice. Next week, we'll be having our own meeting on that. Returning to Nicaragua, Ambassador, could you tell us what is the importance of Nicaragua in the world? What are the importance of its social achievements and the effects of the attempted coup in late 2018?
Well, it is, Nicaragua has been since the 80s. We have been, the revolution in Nicaragua was an inspiration for many countries, was an inspiration from everywhere in the world. And the continuation, this part, and in the 80s, we had the administration, the US administration, made a war against us that has been even in the movies and everything, and books and everything, the Contra War. But we not only confront the counter-war. We went to the, we were attacked by terrorism, a state terrorism that was legally condemned the International Court of Justice. We won a case against the United States because their terrorism. So they were declared a terrorist state. And this has been the only country in the world that has won 2 wars, one in military and also one in the legal system, international legal system to the US. And I think that gives I will say that gives a light for all the countries that confront, that want to lead their countries' independence, how to confront, never go back. You have to always resist, and that's the only way to win. We started our fighting against the United States since we were independent from the other colonialist Spain colonialism. And since then, just right after, we were the United States forces were trying to impose to our people as slavery. And they declared a president, US, someone in the state, William Walker, declared himself president of the United States. So that thing about declaring himself president is not new. It's from the past. It's copied from the past. So, so I think Nicaragua has a lot of lessons in the history to show the war, and we lost elections in the 80s, and we passed a neoliberal 16 years of neoliberals. We never, as a movement, put our knee in the floor. We always stand very strong with the people. And we were a very responsible opposition and very confrontative, but never tried to take always follow the democracy path. So when we took the government in 2007, this was our opportunity for the second wave of the revolution. And we restarted again. And as soon as we restarted again, then again the aggression has started. But here we are.
And of course, Nicaragua, along with Venezuela and Cuba, is right in the crosshairs, it seems, of US imperialism because of its threat of an example. What has been, in recent years, the US has used sanctions against the Nicaraguan government, against President Daniel Ortega, and against the Sandinistas. What has been the material impact of US sanctions, particularly during the ongoing health crisis at the moment?
Well, it is, I'm going to start saying that I just read recently that the New York Police Department has a budget of 6,000 billions, and that it makes the 33rd largest military spender on the planet, which is more that they spend in health, youth housing, and homeless service combined. So, but it is Nicaragua with the smallest armies in Central America and the smallest budget dedicated to army, the ones that dedicate at least half of the budget to welfare and development, that the one that has been declared by 2 presidents, in fact, Ronald Reagan in '85 and Donald Trump on November 2018, an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security and foreign policy of US. And due to that, they have declared national emergency to deal with that threat. So can you imagine what that means? The most powerful country that just one city has the all military might against my country that has never lift a finger against any country in the world. So Ronald Reagan signed and said in '85 that, and Donald Trump signed the same, said that Donald Trump find that the situation in Nicaragua constituted an unusual and extraordinary threat for the national security of the United States. So the aggression to progressive countries, you know, that did not started with President Trump, but has increased, assembling a government that reflects his aggressive, chauvinist, and xenophobic ambitions. And now it's Nicaragua turn under the booth again. Along with Venezuela and Cuba in Latin America and other nations around the world, Nicaragua is the target of unilateral and illegal sanctions imposed by an external power. I just read a few minutes ago that also Mr. Trump has imposed sanctions and against the members of the International Criminal Court of Justice judges, because they decided to investigate and to go ahead to investigate the criminal actions of military in war. So U.S. military and Taliban and Afghans, but U.S. military. So that he decided, so whatever he doesn't like it, he just sanctions them. So this is not just, now it's not just countries. He goes against international organizations, the whole international community. So in December 2008, after the violent far-right externally funded and coordinated coup attempt against the Sandinista government launched in April 2018, failed, the United States government then, in December, signed the NICA Act. That's the Nicaragua Investment Conditionality Act. I don't think many countries has its name in a U.S. act, but here we have. So the NICA Act ensures that the U.S. continues to respond accordingly by cutting off Ortega's access to money until much needed electoral and human rights reforms are implemented. As Ortega expands his cooperation with Venezuela, Cuba, Russia, and other regimes, Nicaragua is both a security threat to the United States and an enemy to the regional stability. That was a declaration of former Senator Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, far-right and advocate for sanctions for Cuba. And one was one of the people who draft this NICA Act, because they think that attacking Nicaragua, they will attack Cuba, they will attack Venezuela, they will attack all the progressive governments in the region. Although it defender claim that the NICA Act is just against individuals who are wrongly accused of violating human rights based on biased information from actors responding in many cases to the same people designing the sanctions. In reality, the act blocks funding and loans from international agencies and banks to Nicaragua when these have been signed by the target government officials. This happened not just with regards to agreements signed after the NICA Act, but also in the case of agreements signed before the NICA Act, meaning that many tens of millions of loans for projects to improve the lives of Nicaraguan people have been blocked. This is despite these having been signed and legally agreed with Nicaragua, having met all the requirements, conditions to receive the loan, and having received prior guarantees, and under the Sandinista governments, always have been having paid all debts and in the time and in the manner specified by the loans. These laws have been one of the national development part of very important part of the national development strategy during the past 13 years of Sandinista government, which has used an economic growth on an average of almost 5% annually to ensure national development and move away from an economical dependence model towards a model which ensures food and sovereignty and energy sovereignty, the growth of a small and medium business and cooperatives, and the reinvestment and rotation of wealth generated within Nicaragua, leading to poverty reduction, education, health, infrastructure development. This today, we continue to live under economic aggressions promoted and imposed unilaterally by the United States, as well as misinformation, terrorism conceived by them and carried out by the media in many countries in brutal, criminal, and xenophobic manners. We are an example of unfounded attack regarding what happens to the pandemic, generating false news in the same way they did when the attempted coup happens in 2018. This, of course, is especially humane. These sanctions are now especially inhumane and damaging in the context of COVID-19, which we believe as a global pandemic, like many other global pandemics which humanity faces, such as climate change, hunger, disease, poverty, and war, can only be defeated through peace, dialogue, cooperation between nations. In this context, where Nicaragua has to rely on our own people to feed the nation every day, it is impossible to impose measures like other countries. So we have to decide how to confront that. As some other developing countries have tried with good results, bad results, but it's the way to see how to confront the pandemic. So besides the continuing US sanctions are depriving Nicaragua of help towards its anti-poverty program and also block much of the assistance, there are these other problems that are affecting Nicaragua, which is one of that is the economy and social life has already been affected because of the April 2018 that affect the economy. And the second is that the current pandemic, the coup leader on Nicaragua and the sponsor agencies in the United States has lashed out massive disinformation campaign. So therefore, the people of Nicaragua, led by the Sandinista government, has responded collectively and heroically to COVID-19 in the face of US sanctions. And we have too many other pandemics, as we have done with other pandemics and aggressions in the past. Now, the important to mention that the health system is robust. The health brigades of professionals and volunteers have carried out more than 2 million visits, house visits, to test, track, and advise, care for, and refer people to the health institution, to the hospital. Not only for COVID-19, other health issues. As a difference, our health system is not just focused on COVID-19. We have prepared for COVID-19, but we are continue helping giving the right access to the right of health to the millions of people of Nicaragua. We carry out also the vaccine, the national vaccine drive with 2 million doses against various diseases. And that was in coordination with Vaccine Alliance and World Health Organization. We had continued fumigation campaigns against mosquitoes, the fighting of dengue, Zika, and other diseases. And we have ensured that millions of children continue receiving their daily meals from local schools and authorities. This balanced approach, based on participation and protagonism of people, as the Sandinista movement always has been, ensure that life and social progress are protected from both COVID-19 and the side effects of this, and to ensure that human rights such as healthcare, nutrition, work, and education, even in the face of the illegal sanction and ongoing destabilization attempts, will continue. We believe that in this time, solidarity and collaboration is a must. The respect of the sovereignty and the cease of the aggression in form of sanction or economical or financial blockade against Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, and other countries must end now. War and armamentism must end now. The people of the world are trying to end racism. And let's remember also that poverty, inequality, and sanctions and blockades are also strangling the livelihood of people. I also want to end this part paying tribute to Cuba. I cannot talk about sanctions, blockade, and solidarity and COVID-19 without paying tribute to Cuba for the constant and historical solidarity with my country. To thank them for coming to Nicaragua when we most need it, being education, to give a hand to carry out the illiteracy campaign and the Yo Si Puedo program, Yes I Can program, that eradicate illiteracy in Nicaragua twice, in the 80s and now. The thousands of doctors that have been prepared in Cuba, that have been educated in Cuba, and that are now serving in Nicaragua and fighting COVID-19. And the generosity with the health knowledge that they have then and now. Our country received a Henry Ribbon Cuban Medical Brigade who came to share their experience and knowledge regarding the coronavirus pandemic. The Cuban Brigade made of virologists, epidemiologists, intensivists, clinical doctors, presented protocols, catalogs of drugs to fight coronavirus and other diseases in the countries around the world. In addition to share their own experience with Nicaraguan authorities, the experts doctors made national diagnosis of the situation of the primary healthcare system in the country, or of our health model. Cuba and the Henry Rees Cuban Medical Brigade deserve forever the gratitude and love of the people of Nicaragua, but also I think we need to push for that Nobel Prize too.
And Ambassador, what, in your view, have been the major social as well as economic advances made by the FSLN government since it returned to power in 2007?
Well, it is important that to understand that the priority in this new phase of revolution has continued the expansion of the human rights of Nicaragua, which includes the right to be free of poverty, mainly that, so that you can develop yourself fully, the right to to have a good nutrition, to free universal healthcare, land, work, dignified housing, education, the right to be connected and partake in the wider economy and society, the right of people to be treated equally and have the same opportunities and rights regardless the ethnicity, language, or gender. This is made possible by a model of integrated national and equitable economic development based on a democratic social structure, with the people governing through social organizations and autonomous territories, ensuring by the collective unity of the Sandinista movement. Since 2007, the FSLN government has created programs focused in particular to strengthen the economy and the productive capacity of family as the nucleus of the new society. Social, human, and economic development have formed a central part of the government program, with emphasis on policies which benefit the poorest and most vulnerable in the society. The free health and free education are now guaranteed. At the same time, 4,020 land titles have been given to families since 2007, with afforded to 28,000 planned for 2020, giving them legal right to their own land. Poverty has been reduced by half, and 1.2 million children have been lifted out of food poverty. In addition, 54% of the 2020 national budget has been ring-fenced for social expenditure. Government programs have been rolled out in the barrios and communities in order to improve conditions for families. The Sandinista government has this has been possible for because we have established free school breakfast, lunch, food pack for children, microcredit for small rural business and programs to support and train small and medium producers to guarantee the sovereignty and supply of the domestic market. In terms of healthcare, which is very important with the pandemic, we are now into our 13th year of continued expansion of the human right of free and quality healthcare. We have a model based on community and family. And for the beginning of this year, the government had built 353 new healthcare units in all the countries since 2007, including 109 birth and childcare facilities, 229 health centers, and 17 primary hospitals, with many more currently under construction. We have 6 under construction. This has continued this year, increasing at the moment is 19, from 5 in 2006. 5 in 2006, 19 now. Incidence of breast cancer, for example, and cervical cancer have been reduced to the introduction of ultrasound screening in many hospitals and improved treatment. Nicaragua is also starting to produce our own medicine and vaccines. In 2010, the government established the Todos con Voz, all have voice program designed to give special attention to people with disability. The program does not only attend the health issues, but also provides resources such as wheelchairs and walking frames to those who need it, as well as all the tests that are needed for them to be treated correctly. The achievements of the government related to the care and living condition of children in Nicaragua have been recognized by the UNICEF. In addition to reducing infant mortality and neonatal mortality rate, maternal mortality rate that has dropped from 97 to 36.5% every 100,000 births from 2007 to 2016, has been possible largely by the increase in the number of births attended in health centers and the attention by qualified personnel. Chronic malnutrition associated with poverty, inequality, and inadequate food has also been reduced by 17%. The number of child development centers catering for children under the age of 6 has also passed from 63 in 2007 to 217 by the end of 2018. UN Food and Agriculture Organization has said Nicaragua, has praised Nicaragua for the social programs that address food security and malnutrition, particularly in rural areas. Nicaragua now produces 90% of the food it consumes. It's only one of the 38 countries to reach the UN Millennium Development Goal of cutting malnutrition by half. The Zero Hunger program has supported more than 100,000 women by providing them with pregnant cows, so sheep, goats, and hens, as well as material to house these animals and free technical support and training so they can have their own food and they can develop their own business in the rural farm. The Healthy Backyard program, for example, provides trainings and seed to urban families to improve nutrition and generate family income. In education, in a country of 6 million people, 2.3 million students have access to free education. In addition, 1.2 million students receive free school meals, something that didn't exist before. All students receive free backpacks, textbooks in the primary and secondary education. Technical education now is free too. And also we have increased the number of technical schools from 26 to 153. And 6% of the national budget goes to public universities. In 2019, 250 digital classrooms were built in secondary school, and 250% increase because there was none before. And 57,000 teachers are continue in this training education on technology during this year. The Nicaraguan government believes that providing free and quality education for all Nicaragua is a human right, an instrument of social justice to eradicate poverty and to provide a bright future for all Nicaragua. This year we started the Rural University Program, and other also important, I think very, very important thing is that Nicaragua is the only non-Nordic nation on the top 5 and the only country in the Inter-American continent, in the American continent, in the top 10, as ranked by the World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report 2020. So we are number 5 in the world in gender, closing the gender gap in the gender gap report. And in 2006, we were 62. We were in the 62 position. We have closed nearly 80% of the gender gap. But we are not happy with that. We want to close the whole gender gap. And we have closed it in educational attainment and health and survival. Nicaragua also has the 3rd most gender equal cabinet in the world, according to UN Women, and was the highest ranking non-European country in the list, behind only Spain and Finland. The UN and Inter-Parliamentary Union have ranked also Nicaragua 3rd in the world for gender balance in politics, with women making 42% of the National Assembly. We are encouraged by this recognition globally and the progress we have made, but we are determined to fully close, as I said, the gender gap, and to install the gender parity across all the attainments, and particularly economic participation. Social programs such as the provision of low interest loans and training for urban women and empowering women economically has helped a lot to achieve that, is intended to that. In addition, for the drive for gender equality, we have also a very strong campaign against domestic violence, which is a pandemic, I will say, in the world, but also here and everywhere else. And we, for that, we have opening what we call police station for women, and to help to focus on the security and dignified life for all the women, and ensure that violence against women is reported and punished accordingly. So far, in local housing, we have, since 2007, we have built 130 new houses, and we will build for the next 5 years, 50,000 more. That's the plan. And those are affordable houses that the government gives the credits for. And since 2007, trade unions in Nicaragua have seen their right restored, and they now play a central role in the decision-making and are valued for their contribution to society. In the neoliberal era, we saw a massive redundancies in the public sector, and as a consequence, the trade unions were considered weakened. Today, the trade unions enjoy solid increase, particularly and also collective bargains agreements, and every year there is an increased salary. Particularly notable is the strength of the public sector unions and the 60,000 strong self-employed workers confederation, representing street sellers and all those who are living outside what economists call the formal employment. We call them family employment, and we call it dignity. You know, there is nothing informal about putting food in the table of the people. Energy coverage now has surpassed 97.5%, and coming from a very, very 26%. In 2020-2021, 18 electrical substations has been built, and the most notable is the one that has been built in the rural area. Sewerage has been vastly improved, and access to drinking water now cover 85% of the country. Nicaragua is also taking tangible actions to fight climate change by providing green energy. 80% of the energy matrix is now provided from the renewable sources, 25% in 2007. The government target is 90% by 2020. The government is also prioritizing protected areas. In 2020, $2 million will be invested in protected areas of the country with emphasis in sustainable tourism and commerce and Nicaraguan natural reserves. Municipal staff members are also being trained to care for the wildlife reserve and ecological park. The government has devoted more resources to the Caribbean region than any other government, providing new roads, drinking water and sanitation, emergency coverage, health and hospital and schools. We have to remember, for those who don't know Nicaragua, Nicaragua has two parts, the Pacific area, which was the developed part, and the forgotten one, which was the Caribbean side. So we have devoted a lot of resources to make it equal. So Nicaragua, all Nicaragua have the same access to everything, have the same rights, to ensure they all have access to everything. So an important initiative, for example, was the road opening of the road between Managua and Bluefields in May last year, and the installation in Coney Island of the first only solar panel plant in a small island like that in Latin America. Another example has been that the running water in Bilwi, North Caribbean, a program with the Inter-American Development Bank. And more importantly, the North Caribbean has been previously isolated and excluded from development. And now both North Caribbean and South Caribbean have autonomy, as I say, political autonomy, fully cultural, equally in recognition of its heritage, Creole, Afro-descendant, indigenous, and is receiving strong financial support to unleash the potential of all its people. This is all achieved in cooperation with community. We cannot do this as a government if we don't have the support of the people, not imposed from above. It's the people of Nicaragua are the protagonists. They are the ones who are doing it. And these, the autonomy for example, in the Caribbean coast and the land rights that guarantees the indigenous and Afro-descendant groups, is to ensure development, to empower them, not to disrupt them. So all the Nicaraguan government programs are going forward despite of the pandemic, and within the pandemic, with difficulties and all the efforts. This year we will continue and focus on working on peace and prosperity through the integrated development model, which has been implemented since 2007. Family, community, society are the fundamental blocks of this model. The defense of the country's sovereignty remains paramount as it seeks to build a better future for its people.
Thank you, Ambassador. That was.
Sorry that it takes a lot, but I have to take this opportunity to tell the people the truth.
I suppose mentioning all of Nicaragua's achievements would take a very long time, but it is important nonetheless to get out the message that there is an alternative way of modeling society, and then Nicaragua, along with Cuba, along with Venezuela and other countries, shows an example of that. It's unsurprisingly, therefore, that since 2007, anytime there has been elections held in Nicaragua, the Sandinistas have in fact increased their vote among the people, and it's not hard to see why. Despite that, in 2018, there was an outbreak of violence across Nicaragua, even despite the fact that Nicaragua has the lowest crime rate in Central America. There was no end of examples of and evidence of US imperialist involvement, the involvement of organizations like the National Endowment of Democracy, which of course was set up by Ronald Reagan to funnel money to the Contras in Nicaragua not too long ago. Could you talk about briefly about that sort of unrest in 2018? How did the government and the people of Nicaragua respond to that and manage that?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. First of all, I just want to, it was not a pacific demo as we've seen in support of Black Lives Matter now. It's not nothing to do with that. Despite of what the Western media is saying about it, we have to be clear and unequivocal that what happened in Nicaragua in April 2018 was an extremely bad coup attempt which failed. This part of a wider effort by imperialism and the right wing within Latin America to remove progressive governments in the region, to reverse the progress made during past decades and to return to a model of dependency, submission, and neoliberalism by whatever means necessary. It was an attempt of constitutional rupture, an attempt to change legitimate government and the actions of internal and international criminal groups to achieve those objectives that are being proposed illegally and illegitimately. The same process is ongoing, is ongoing in the Bolivarian people in Venezuela. We continue to resist successfully in the face of murderous sanctions, terrorist and invasion attempts against Cuba also. And it's tragically that the world have seen what happened in Bolivia, what happened with that soft coup, that was called a soft coup, and other countries in the region. And it has been achieved, many of them, through low warfare. Unfounded allegation of corruption, like we saw in Brazil and we saw in Paraguay. So, and many other. It's important to remember that US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has openly declared that the objective of the US is to destabilize and change the governments of Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. So there is no doubt about who is behind all this, who was behind. The countries that he deemed to be the axis of evil in the hemisphere. In order to achieve these objectives, for years, as you mentioned, the US has been funding the local media and network of human rights agencies to construct their version of the truth. The net, you mentioned that journal Global American published an article of unabashed candor in which it congratulates itself for laying the groundwork for insurrection. So I don't have to, to invent. They published themselves. They said it themselves. With this established, for the details of the coup attempt in Nicaragua in 2018, I actually, because I don't think we have all the time of the war, but I will recommend to read a document produced by a group of activists from US, UK, and different parts of the world. It's a very long, very heavy one, and produced by the Alliance for Global Justice, and it's called Live from Nicaragua, Uprising or Coup, and has been updated until June 2019. Also, it's good for those who want to learn a little bit what happened, the film Nicaragua, the April Crisis and Beyond by US human rights and labor lawyer, academic, and filmmaker and journalist Dan Kovalik, who shows very clearly the coordination of the coup attempt directed and funded by right-wing external forces through a number of self-proclaimed NGOs, which operates as their agents. The people of Nicaragua were subject to terrible violence during this period, both physical violence, including the killing of police, of public officials trying to go to work, of normal members and supporters, but not only killed, were terribly killed. They were tortured in the streets. They were tortured in the streets, in the barricades that they lived themselves. So, and also simple citizens, the killing of simple citizens trying to exercise their right to work according to the rule of law in the country, but against the wishes of the we call the tranque de la muerte, so the blockade or the roadblocks of death, the aggressive and illegal armed road blockades, which emerged in all the countries as part of the coup attempt. Those were financed, where that is clear that they contracted people to manage those. They armed them, and every day they were there. There was a military action, and everything was funded. Everything had money, and drugs were running there. Added to this physical violence is also the aggression it implies against people's human rights, including the right to work, to live in peace, to healthcare, to education, to information. As these far-right groups were burning down hospitals, media organizations, killing journalists, stopping children from going to school, and doing great damage to the economy. In this context, the Sandinista government responded responsibly by protecting the safety and the right of the citizenship, the social movement workers, people in need of work and healthcare, the police, the military, they all act accordingly, looking first for the safety of the majority of the people. The example, as a result of this situation, economic growth rates fell for 4.7% in 2000, from 4.7% growth in 2017 to minus 3.8% in 2019, and minus 5 in 2019, because the effects, you don't see it in the same in the first year, you see it in the same year. But despite that, we as a responsible government, we ring-fence the development, the budget for development and social justice, and to carry out our social justice program. However, we are getting better. By the sanctions, we are working better. We are getting above, reducing the minus, the growth, the negative growth, and we're working towards that. So the government had tread to a very fine line between trying to avoid inflaming the situation in that moment, and establish the Truth Commission, try to dialogue with the opposition. That was not possible. We said we commit to this. We signed many agreements during that thing. The only ones who actually comply was the government. So one of the things that has been happening after that, as an aftermath of that, is that thousands of Truth and Justice Commission and Reconciliation Commission throughout the country has been developed, and that has established the peace, because the people itself has organized it and look for peace and to solve the problems that they have locally. And the government has not been perfect in all the delivering all the projects that we have, but that doesn't give the right to provoke a coup attempt, to intend to eliminate the government that was elected by the majority of the people with a high level of vote. So the first thing was we managed to defeat the coup attempt with the participation of the people. The government prioritized, as I said, the reconciliation and peace, and to avoid the situation becoming worse. Since this time, hundreds of the prisoners that were made prisoner because they disrupt, they kill people, they destroy public hospitals and everything, and schools and all that were involved in violent crimes, were put in jail and have been released. Most of them have been released. So there is we don't have political prisoners. as the media try to convey. In fact, violent offenders who were in those, as I said, have been released, and just a minority is still in prison, and are got in very dignified conditions. And you can see it in the film that I mentioned before from Dan Kovalik, because they said it themselves. So the truth about what happened in Nicaragua in 2018 is coming out through the cracks and fissures of a dominant narrative, but it has little impact compared to the destruction and spiritual pain that my people has to mourn. However, the lessons learned will remain for many generations. The Nicaraguan people were the political actors, the essential protagonists in changing the correlation of political forces from April to July 8, 2018. Organizing from the community, from this, they learn, the people, the youth, our youth, the Sandinista youth, learn about social media, where this was a battle of values, identities, and individual and collective history. The dialogue between generations and the handing down of values to the youth from the leader of historical members of the FSLN all change the power relationship. Values and identity must be installed in human beings if they are to build new realities and become capable of resisting a dominant system. Dialogue and the ushering of a new generation was essential in this time. So this, as in the past, the youth carry out the revolution, and the youth carry out the defense of the revolution in the 80s, combating the Contra-war. Now the youth was again the protagonist and was the one who defeated through social media, through community organization, and to defending the communities themselves. That they were the ones who won the peace, who won the peace. We believe that only Nicaragua can decide on Nicaraguan futures. Without outside intervention and without sanctions that make the poorest and the poor suffer and damage the country's vulnerable economy. We are reminded of the internationalist slogan of yesterday that is now still present: let Nicaragua live.
It's hard not to make the point, the massive contrast between how the Nicaraguan government has handled the unrest that was sponsored by external imperialism, with the ongoing protests in the United States, where the reaction has been complete opposite. It really does show the values of different states. Ambassador, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of this discussion. Would you like to make any concluding remarks to the audience?
Well, I just want to say a few things. I think that is important for the people to know, and for us to know, and for us to recognize. It is difficult to understand, and sometimes for afar to understand the welfare media going on in full. It's sometimes difficult to understand what happened in April in Nicaragua, when we were, as you said, the most peaceful country in Central America, and with a thriving democracy and all that. I think you cannot. If you have seen what happened in other countries, you will, and you really focus on the whole picture, you will see very clear that then what is behind and who is behind. I feel that even if some people misunderstood the situation and others used it to act against us, our alliance with progressive and anti-imperialist forces have remained firm, and in many cases became even stronger. Many great advocates, such as yourself and others around the world, who are too many to name, have been very vocal in defending Nicaragua from imperialism and informing about the social progress we have achieved and continue to achieve in the face of aggression, destabilization, sanctions, and now this new pandemic. We also know that Venezuela and Cuba are successfully resisting the same aggression. We stand inseparable side by side with them, and they with us. And our bonds are strengthened even further, not weakened by this experience. Furthermore, international organizations and governments around the world continue to work closely with us, investing and supporting Nicaragua on the basis of our social progress, on the basis that we meet our obligation, that we are ensuring fairness and mutual benefit when it comes to investment. For example, just in the last month, Nicaragua has received investment loans of support from Taiwan, South Korea, UNICEF, UNESCO, World Health Organization, the Central American Bank, and economic integration. So we are looking for solidarity and other sources of development, so we can continue development. We have not just waiting for the Almighty to resolve our problem. We are looking for South-South cooperation from other ways of cooperation. So the party, for example, is important to mention in April 2018, by that time, the Party of European Left, who coordinate around 40 political parties in the Western Hemisphere, condemned and with more than 300 MPs and national parties have made clear that they reject all attempt to break Nicaraguan constitutional continuity through violence. They specifically reject the interference of the United States, and the Sao Paulo Forum also, which organized most political parties of the Latin American left, such as Brazil Workers' Party and Morena from Mexico, has issued a statement on July 20th of 2018 in which it stated that strongly reject the interventionist policy of the United States in the internal affairs of the Sandinista Nicaragua. They condemn the hegemonic interests that are causing violence, destruction, and death through the manipulation and destabilization actions of terrorism. So they also, the Sao Paulo Forum just a few days ago called for a drive for they call it bloqueo no and solidarity sí, so blockade no and solidarity yes, against the sanctions, blockades, and aggression imposed by the US, UK, and the European Union against Nicaragua, against Venezuela, and some against in the blockade against Cuba. And so to end the economic, commercial, and financial aggressions, and it was to be addressed to Antonio Gutierrez and Michelle Bachelet and many, many more in the human rights organization. And so if you haven't signed it, please sign it. Please go and sign it. And so in the midst of these problems, some nations that have already been the victim of unilateral coercive measures have unsuccessfully requested the lifting of sanctions, but we are trying through these instruments. So the world is trying through this mechanism. So the world is expressing it's disgust, it's crying for to lift those sanctions. So it's important to mention that ALBA, the Alliance of Bolivarian People of Our America, and the TCP, the Treaty for Trade of the People, have rejected energically all the sanctions imposed in Nicaragua. That was in May 2020, but in 2018 also, they condemned the violence and the attempted coup. So when I said we are not only getting stronger, is because the people through all these movements, Alba, is not just the government, it's the people also of those countries that are willing to continue this path of independence that we have developed. So, for example, yesterday, ALBA met, the heads of governments of ALBA met President Ortega was there. He condemned these measures, but also he said that that we have to continue the path of cooperation. So we will continue with PetroCaribe in Alba. We will continue to strengthen in the Bank of Alba. So the cooperation among nations in the Alba group and the Caribbean countries will continue and more stronger than ever. So we don't see us isolated. We see us as part of a movement towards social justice. Another thing is that we have been leading also the defense of Mother Earth in the international arena. We have been very vocal on that. And we didn't even sign the Paris Agreement in a moment when we thought it was too weak for the right reasons. And now in 2017, they said Nicaragua was right, because we need more ambition. We need to do what Nicaragua said it was needed to do. So we have continued to collaborate with international community. And so we think that despite the economic aggressions imposed by US, imposed by the European Union, despite the NICA Act, Nicaragua is working together with everyone, with solidarity with countries around the world to contribute to the progress and economic development, not only of Nicaragua, but all the whole world that is developing. The government has promoted a model of human development and participatory representative. And we will continue that way. We will continue that path. We will continue transforming the health, prioritizing the investment on areas of human development. We will expansion all the drinking water, the access to electricity, the protection of historical and cultural heritage. We want to stop. We will resist this, and we will become even further. So we think that there is a way different, and we show there is possible. That there is a possibility to change from within, that the countries can develop justice, they can develop social justice. So, of course, the situation of COVID is another challenge, but we think that the model of social progress that we have developed will continue, because it's what defines us. This is why the people continue to accompany and defend the government, the sovereignty, the peace, and the democracy in Nicaragua. Most importantly, our people continue to move forward in solidarity and fraternity among themselves and with free working people around the world. And this is what ensures our strength, the resilience, and the continuation of the Sandinista model, whatever it happens. All the Nicaraguan government programs will go forward, will focus on working for peace, prosperity through the integrated development model, which has been implemented since 2007. Family, community, and society are the blocks of this model. The defense of the country's sovereignty is paramount, and it seeks to build a better future for our people. Hasta la victoria siempre.
Venceremos, Ambassador. Gracias por venir. Thank you very much again for giving us.
I like your Spanish.
We've been working on it. This is the final of 3 meetings. The other 2 we had were on Venezuela and Cuba. And it seems to be that the same messages seem to coming through, that message of resilience, of resistance, of solidarity. We think speak for everyone when we say somos Nicaragua, somos Venezuela, somos Cuba. We are Nicaragua, we are Venezuela, we are Cuba. So best of luck going forward. we mentioned earlier some of the stuff going on at the moment in the United States. Next week, we'll be interviewing Margaret Kimberley. She's the editor of the Black Agenda Reports website. She's a political activist and also the author of books. So we'll be interviewing her next week, and we hope, Ambassador, you can join us. I'm sure it'll be very interesting.
I will try, but just one last thing. There is no luck. There is collective effort. So we count on all of you to defeat.
We don't have any excuse, so we all have to get involved in solidarity. So, Ambassador, once again, muchas gracias and viva Nicaragua Libre.
Thanks to all. Viva Nicaragua Libre. Viva Cuba, viva Venezuela.
Viva Irlanda.